live, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm weird, man. Right before we started this, I got a little nervous, man. It must be we ain't been on here a while, dude, and I got a little nerves, man, which is really weird. But that's okay, man. I'm doing pretty good. We hate that we've been gone away for so long, but obviously got to take care of some personal matters in life. Jeremy's got a rehab center there in his office for one. Number two, it was my 10-year anniversary, last month. So me and my wife had a trip actually scheduled last year to go to Europe. We were able to take advantage of that this year. So we went to Europe. I took her to Europe for, almost, about 10 days or so. So it took me to Europe in the middle of a 5-game losers streak, I think, which was good for us. So I actually listened to Kansas State game on the radio there from Rome, Italy, man.
No, you called it. Like everybody knows, we have two Bulldogs. Sam tore his ACL. We thought it was going to be a pretty, decent recovery, but it ended up having to put yoga mats all across my office floor, aka the studio, so he could have, some decent footing as he rehabbed from knee surgery, and then of course military training over the last couple of months has kind of been hit and miss, like trying to ramp it up. Our op tempo's kind of ramped up, so just happy to be back. Again, like Clint said, after 5-7 season. You got to look at turning over the roster. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk a lot about that 5-7 season and what's led to this, and just happy to be back.
Absolutely, man. It's funny because I had people putting APBs out on us on my personal Facebook account, checking on us, man, because you haven't seen this in a while. That means a lot, man. People in your DM saying, "Hey, man, y'all guys okay?" We try to stay active on Twitter as much as we possibly can, or really possibly could. But it's nice to be on here, man. I hate promising shows, because life, gives you ups and downs and stuff. But I can tell you that me and Jeremy are trying to. I think we're on the other side of everything, kind of that was impacting us from doing shows. But I think we're going to try to do one. I think go back to our original Wednesdays and Sundays in the off season to at least give you 2 shows, man. There's too much to talk about, man. That's what's crazy. Somebody right here said a ton has went down on the 40 acres. Since we last saw you guys, hell on the 40 acres across college football. And I think that is, you want to take that banner off under there, Jeremy?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. Not really on the 40 acres, but with the coaching carousel that's gone on across college football. You're talking about NIL. You're talking about the transfer portal. You're talking about, attrition from really the Longhorns moving forward, which me and Jeremy had a really good discussion. And I think we can really start there about attrition and who's leaving and some pluses and minuses with that across the program into really probably winter ball into the spring, man. Let's talk a little bit about attrition.
So, like you talked about, there's been guys leave like Avante Woodard, limited production on the campus. There's been guys leave like Marcus Caldwell, similar, zero production on campus for the football team, or limited. I won't say zero, but limited, impact towards the football team. And you want those guys to be replaced with guys that are going to make an impact next year. And then you got guys like Deshaun Jameson who are coming back, who has been in the program since 2018, came in with that class that we've always talked about with Cook and the safeties, Foster and Stearns and that group. Glad he's coming back. And Overshown the same way. But I feel like this offense and defensive line needs work. So the one addition by subtraction I thought we could have had that decided to come back this week, I'll be honest, was Keandre Coburn. He didn't produce this much this past year as we thought him and Devondre would. And so to see him come back, I just don't know if it's a plus for this football team when you're trying to turn over culture and what could be up to 35 to 40 players. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Jameson. Jameson is I think he brings multiple he can do multiple things for you, really as a special teams guy. And I think that's probably when he leaves the 40 acres, he's going to make his name as a special teams guy, probably in the NFL. You're always looking for a guy that can return kicks or return punts. And I think that's where, so from a quarterback standpoint, we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. We'll see if some other guys pass him up on that depth chart. You know what I'm saying? But I think they had to have honest conversations with these coaches at the end of the year. And the coaches said, hey, you know what? We're going to give you an opportunity to come back, but just realize that, hey, it's a dog-eat-dog fight moving forward. There's too many young guys that are coming in and too many young guys currently on the roster, especially at that defensive line position, to not create that competition, to be able to push these old guys out of there if they're not competing and they're not performing at the level in which they should be performing. Byron Murphy, dude. Byron Murphy at the end of the year probably should have been a starter over multiple guys on that defensive line based on what he was able to do.
Production.
And that's why he wound up being, I think, all Big 12 honorable mention, because of what he was able to do. So, yeah, I think I never don't want to obviously shit on a kid or whatever the case may be, but I'm with you, man. 1A would have been on the bus, would have probably been Keandre Copeland for me, just based on production and production alone.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like you talk about this recruiting class with Jamon Tapp, Justice Finkley, all these defensive linemen coming in. You kind of want to make way for those guys to produce. And like you've talked about, there's underclassmen and guys like Albert Collins, who I would like to move back inside, to be honest with you, and get pass rush from like a kid like Derek Brown or that kind of frame. But yeah, T Sweat I'm fine with. And again, I'm not saying Keandre Copeland cannot be a productive member of this team. He was a starter on this team for 3 years. I get it. What I'm saying is that when you talk about 35 to 40, new guys coming in, which is what we're probably going to have as we continue to talk in this show between the transfer portal and this recruiting class. This recruiting class right now, I think, is at 21. Mm-hmm. And there's 6 or 7 other guys out there, they want on the offensive line and then in the secondary. You're talking about Larry Turner Good, you're talking about Devin Campbell, you're talking about Cam Dewberry, you're talking about Kelvin Banks, multiple Malik Ogbo on the offensive line. Then you're talking about the secondary, Larry Turner Goodwin, Jacoby Matthews, just guys that would make this program deeper and better. So not that I don't want him to come back and take up a roster spot. Again, he has produced. It's just one of those things where it's like, what's the net gain here? Do we turn the roster over with younger guys? And again, he's made that decision. Coaches obviously want him back. But it's one of those things where it's just like, glad to have D.O. back, proven playmaker, been doing it. And then Deshaun Jameson, like you talked about, he helps with all facets of the football game, including special teams.
Yeah, I don't want to steal your thunder, but when me and you talked a few days ago, you were talking about the biggest really culture change you'll see is when younger guys are passing up older guys on the starting 11 on both sides of the football team. Both
especially in the trenches.
And
like I said, I think we understand that Casey Thompson is going to probably be, if he does not transfer out again, this transfer portal thing is crazy. You got an Elite 11 quarterback, which you chronicled over on Twitter for the last week, and Malik Murphy, who's single-handedly, because we watched his tape, and not crapping on the athletes that he plays with, but he has a less than stellar roster and has led them to a state championship game. We know he's 6'5", 225 pounds, and has tremendous arm talent. And then you got the talks of Quinn Ewers coming in. So I feel like that, and then Casey Thompson, if he comes back and is that bridge between them and their second year on campus. And not to say Charles Ryder Hudson Card can't compete. We'll see what happens with that deal. But I think you have some things at quarterback. We all know the running back room is stacked. They continue to bring in recruits after recruits. James Drayton continues to do his job. Receiving corps is going to get a little thin, but we knew it was going to be. I mean, Steve Sarkisian told us when he came in, there was 16 scholarships at that time. That position slowly attrited away. If Troy O'Meara comes back healthy, Jordan Whittington comes back healthy, Xavier Worthy is able to do what he does, and then you got guys like Brennan Thompson and these other guys that they're looking at, I think the wide receiver room will be okay. It's just in the trenches in that front seven. If you start seeing guys take jobs in the offensive line, defensive line, linebacker core, then I feel like we're in a very good place. So we're turning this roster over for a net positive.
Yeah. So let's talk about, since you've kind of scooted into this recruiting thing. Let's talk about it real quick because I have some comments. Let me bring them up here. First and foremost, man, I tell you what. Shout out, and I know that he was invited to come on here tonight, man, to Derek Brown, man. That dude is not only a commit, dude. He is a recruiter for this program. He's a recruiter for this program. Between him and Justice Finkley doing all these Instagram lives, trying to get the hype revolving around this recruiting class. To me, just wanted to give him a shout out for that, man, because every time you're on Twitter, anytime you're on Twitter, he's retweeting over guys that have to make a decision saying, hey, come to the Longhorns, come to the Longhorns, come to the Longhorns, man. And I think we have to have that here. point, and you talked about it a little bit, and that's loyalty of this incoming class to this program. And that obviously me and you both serving in the military. I think loyalty is always going to be 1A for me. Yes, you can bring all the 4 stars in, you can bring all the 5 stars in, you can bring all this elite talent in, but to me, you want to have guys that want to come to the University of Texas and play for the University of Texas and be loyal to the program. Instead of feeling like you have a sense of entitlement. Yeah, I'm going to the University of Texas, and you never really produce the level that these guys are that are showing loyalty to the program.
Loyalty? Like you said, he's their lead recruiter. He's on social media. He's atting guys. He's hosting Instagram lives with other recruits and inviting other recruits that are not committed but want to bring them to the program. He's not attended one class nor one practice at the University of Texas, but is so bought into Steve Sarkisian's vision for the University of Texas and where this program is going that he's willing to put his name out there and say, hey, please come follow me. I think this thing's going the right direction. It's continuous. And I think he's brought Justice Finkley now on board. Like, he was the lead recruiter, and now he's kind of brought in Justice Finkley to be that way. And it's fantastic. Like, if you're brought into that program before you've ever attended a practice or a class, then how committed are you going to be once you put on that burnt orange in practice and on the games? And how committed are you going to be to your education and doing what's right for the university? So when they call him the captain, and I've seen that on Twitter, like, this guy needs to be a captain. I truly agree with him. He just needs to stay humble, get to the university. I don't think he's an early enrollee. He wasn't part of that list that 247 distributed earlier this week. But as soon as he gets there, he's going to make an impact. I feel, if not on the field production right away, at least in leadership for this 2022 class.
I've been following recruiting. I don't know how many years to put on it, man. Way before, for a long time, and I just don't think I've ever felt that you got this much chatter out of one recruiting class together, and you feel it. It's like a togetherness. You know what I'm saying? From B.J. Allen to Justice Finkley to Derek Brown to the list goes on and on and on and on and on with these guys, and I think that's important that they create that team now before they even get on the 40 acres, because they're going to be that much stronger moving forward together.
Relationships. Yeah. Again, because you're talking about the 2018 class and its attrition and its impact on the program. And I'm stealing this, I think, from Craig Way and Jeff Howe earlier this week, and how Jeff said that 2018, eight players probably coming back. 19, probably 8 players coming back. And these are these COVID year guys. These are these 16 guys that have been on the campus for 5 and almost some of them 6 years. This team is going to get very, very young, very, very fast. And that's why I think the turnover, and I think evaluations, we're talking recruiting, right? So me and you talked about this since the season ended up the way it did is yes, we have 4 and 5 star recruits on campus, but what has it got us? It got us one Sugar Bowl in the last 4 years. It got us one 10-win season. Stop going after 4 and 5 stars. Not necessarily stop going after 4 or 5 stars. Make a talent evaluation that fits your system. Regardless of what 247, On3, Rivals, or ESPN, find that athlete who's going to come into your system and be able to do well. Get that talent evaluation right, because teams are beating us with less than our what we call blue chip ratio by 247. Get the talent evaluation right, and then once they get on campus, develop them. And I know this is developmental staff. None of the players on this year's football team were recruited by Steve Sarkisian other than those transfers, like the linebackers, like Ray Thornton, Obi Agofu, other than Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy was the only recruit that played football for Texas in the 2021 season. Yes, was he a transfer from Michigan? Absolutely he was, but it was his first year of college football. They saw something in that kid. They brought him. They said he would work really well in their system, and he did. So, again, I hope this 2022 class is just that, talent evaluation, and then they will fit my system, and then we're going to be able to develop them over 4 years.
Yeah. So David Williams talked about receiver depth will likely remain thin since there are questions about Mary's health. We haven't seen anything from him over the last couple of years, and until you see something from him, it's kind of hard to get behind that hype again, and Dixon's production. If the top 3 receivers in 22 are Worthy, Whittington, and Thompson, and I'm going to throw this name out here too, because he was injured, and we'll kind of see where he comes off of injury as well, who's also a speedster out of Florida. And we know Sark loves speed, is Jaden Alexis. We'll kind of see where he is after his injury, because he's another speed guy, just like he may be faster than Worthy. He may be faster than Thompson. He's a sprinter out of Florida, so we'll kind of see where he goes. But from a wide receiver standpoint, I don't think it's you want to have more guys than just 3 guys to be able to throw out there. You want to be out there probably 4 or 5, a rotation of 4 or 5 really, really, really good wide receivers to keep running verticals down the field. But from a wide receiver standpoint, Sark already knew that he had way too many wide receivers in that room because he's not going to rotate wide receivers out through the game anyway. So really, from a depth standpoint, it really comes down to injuries is what's going to hurt you if you don't have that 4th or 5th or 6th wide receiver in that room that can go out there and do the same thing that the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd guys are doing.
That's exactly what I wrote, without injury. I don't know if you can see it, W/O, without injury. Because, again, we talked about it. When he came into the program, there were 16 receivers on scholarship. There was we knew that position was going to attrit. We knew that Jake Smith would transfer. We felt like there was going to be other, guys, and now Avonte Woodard decided to transfer. Got some kids get in trouble and get removed from the program. But we knew that position was going to attrit itself. But I just don't know that it needs to be 6 or 7 deep. Like you said, you got your 3 guys you run out there on 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, and then barring injury, you're running 4 or 5 out there. You don't have to have 7 or 8 receivers. Are you going to stack your football team like that? Absolutely. You're going to hope you got 7 or 8 guys that go out there and produce. But what's necessary is those top 3 guys stay healthy, produce, and then if you need 4 and 5, they're not just as good, but able to pick up the slack when they come in. And like I said, the tight end room is getting a lot younger. Kay Brewer's moving on, so you're left with Jared Wiley. I think he's the elder guy. I think he'll be a junior coming up this year. Checking my depth chart real quick. No, he'll be a senior. But then after that, it's Gunnar Helm, it's Juan Davis, it's Jatavian Sanders, and it's a very, very young room. Just kind of walking back where we were about, where we feel with different position groups going into early signing day. And then, like you said, this craziness called the transfer portal.
Yeah, so Wes Bearden here, I don't know what he's at, Victor, and I don't know what Victor said, but he said, with Wes Bearden saying that's why Sark is looking at it for 3 quarterbacks. Me and Jeremy were talking yesterday, and I think we could both agree that he's probably trying to clear the quarterback room and bring guys in that necessarily fit his system. Do you agree with that, Jeremy?
Absolutely. That's what he has to do. Like, he understands the skill set that's going to take to run his RPO game. And he understands what moves the football down the field, and that's getting the ball to Xavier Worthy, getting the ball to Bijan Robinson. And scoring wasn't a problem. Scoring was not a problem this year. Like I said, you ended up, I want to say, in the Big 12, second in scoring offense. Scoring the football wasn't a problem. It's playing complementary football, which it's been for the last 3 or 4 years. You couldn't stop teams when you had a 20-point lead, against Oklahoma, when you had a lead against Baylor, when you had a lead against, Oklahoma State, the 2 teams that played for the eventual Big 12 championship. But just one of those things that, you have to. You have to go out there and look at that skill set that will fit your system the best and recruit those guys. And like I say, once you get them on the campus, then you develop them, make them better.
Yeah. All right. Biggest news probably over the last 2 weeks is probably Quinn Ewers. If you want to know what me and Jeremy's thoughts on Quinn Ewers, you could probably go back this time last year, right? Probably this time last year, a little bit before, probably June, July, maybe is when he first.
The original commitment corner was in August of 2020. And
August.
And I don't know if it's still up there, but it was at one time. I mean, maybe because at the time it was probably our highest viewed video at the time, because we had a little bit of intel that told us that he was going to originally commit. We kind of got it out in front of it. But yeah, arm talent. At the time, all I saw was sophomore film, and it's probably the best arm talent I've seen. I don't know what I said back then, but just Matthew Stafford, like just a machine gun, just a guy that got the ball out of his hands quickly, and when he did, he could make every throw. There was an 18-yard out route on one hash to the other hash, he had no problems. Fitting the ball in tight windows, no problems. Touch passes over the middle, behind the linebackers, in front of the safeties, no problem. So, Quinn Ewers has that arm talent that's again, that's why he was rated 1,000, the number 1 recruit by ESPN, Rivals, and at the time 247, because On3 wasn't a thing. He was the number 1 recruit by all 3 services. He would actually be in this class with Malik, but chose to, forgo his senior year in high school at Southlake and go to Ohio State, where he sat. And so that's that's what me and Clint were trying to talk about the other day. Is Malik sat out his junior year of high school because California COVID, and it's turnabout. It's Quinn Ewers sitting out what would be his senior year in high school because he elected to go to college early. Again, when I talked to Clint, I was like, you really can't equate, high school and college. The practices he got against Ohio State's defense probably served him a lot of value. Not to say that he missed a full season, but I think it's just one of those things that it's one of those guys where if you have the opportunity to take him, you got to have him on your roster.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I put out a couple of tweets this week, because I love Malik Murphy, man. Again, loyalty means a lot to me. Malik is you got 2 Elite 11 quarterbacks in the same class. You're talking about a guy that's probably 6'5", 225 pounds, that has a rocket for an arm. But I'm going to say from a schematic standpoint, playing against the competition he's playing in California, he's probably not going to see the same defenses that you're probably going to run the same offense that you're going to run probably in Texas high school football. And that's not a shot at him, right? And I just think it's going to take him a couple of years to progress to where Sark really wants him as a quarterback. So do I think that Malik Murphy would come in and start this year? Absolutely not. Do I think Quinn Ewers would coming from Ohio State? Like you said, the speed of the game, he's had an opportunity to play against college. There's a couple of snaps that he took in real action, but being in that room with Ryan Day, for a year, playing against that defense at Ohio State, the speed of the game is probably not going to be a thing for him. And do I think if you picked up a Quinn Ewers, it's hard to see him not start at the University of Texas this year. Now, I'm never going to anoint someone. I'm all for NIL. I probably wouldn't pay somebody $2 to $5 million to come play at the University of Texas, not knowing if they're not going to start or not. But with the arm talent that he has, it's hard to say that there's anybody else in that quarterback room that can do the things that he does and fit those passes in those tight windows and make those decisions that Steve Sarkisian is going to want his quarterbacks to make.
Yeah, but again, like we said, it has to be an open competition. Like, you can't hand him the job. You got a guy like Casey Thompson who before his thumb injury was playing pretty good football, and we saw on Twitter, on social media after the fact that was a pretty nasty injury, but he tried to gut through it. And it says something, and I know there's a lot of Hudson Card fans out here. It says something that he was that far injured and Hudson Card never saw the field afterwards. Is that Casey Thompson, Steve Sarkisian felt that Casey Thompson gave him the best chance to win, even with that gross, blue-looking thumb and hand. But it needs to be an open competition. Every position needs to be an open competition. Again, with this amount of turnover, 35 to 40 roster spots, everybody needs to come in hungry. Everybody needs to understand that they need to prove themselves to find them way on the depth chart. And a comment was made about Braden Liebrock, and I didn't forget about Braden. It's just when I'm referencing, position groups, I'm going by my depth chart, the current depth chart from the last game. So that was an omission on my part because he had the surgery. But yeah, I recognize that he's still on the football team. But looking at the depth chart, it was Connor or Kay Brewer, Jared Wiley, and all the freshmen. So
yeah, Luke Sanders. I think this is it, man. Quinn is on the play now timeline. Malik is on the Mac Jones timeline. Both work. People need to stop picking sides. Absolutely. I think you can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong with having 2 Elite 11 quarterbacks in your room that are at 2 different points in their progression. That's where we sit right now, because we were talking about this last night too. Quinn Ewers being at Ohio State for 1 year, he only has to play 2 years before he's eligible to go to the NFL. To me, Malik Murphy probably needs
2 years.
2 years to get where he needs to go to be able to start, and then play an additional 2 years to get drafted to the NFL to where he needs to be.
You said this the other day when we were talking, is that it's almost like that. It's like if Quinn Ewers, hypothetically, if he was to come in and take the starting job next year, like you said, he has 2 years of eligibility before he's eligible for the NFL draft, and it's almost perfect because Mike Roach equated the division that Malik plays in California is equivalent to a 4A Division II team, in the state of Texas. So not lower Division 3, 2, or 1A, but somewhere in the middle tier. You know what 6A teams are and 5A teams are, but kind of in that mid tier, that 4A Division II. And so, like you said, it's going to take development. The speed of the game is definitely going to be different. and he gets a chance to watch Quinn or whoever the starter is next year, kind of learn, Steve Sarkisian's offense. He develops a little bit better, and then that junior year, he's ready to go. And like you said, that Mac Jones, on the phone conversation, this guy brought it up too, is he could tell him, I only need 1 year with a guy to make him a pro. And to me, Mac Jones was the number one quarterback drafted. But this year in professional football, he's definitely been the most productive, starter for New England and winning football games. So definitely could see that continuation or that situation developing if Quinn was to come in here and win that job.
Yeah, he went 2 for 3 for 19 yards against Buffalo the other night and got a win. They were talking about it.
But JRJ 151, I don't think you worry about that, man. I think it's a year to year, almost like a week to week. I mean, if you just look at since we joined the show, there's now Evan Stewart, who recently committed to A&M, is looking to come hang out with Quinn this weekend. If that happens, may not happen. Cam Williams, why we've been talking, just decommitted from Oregon. The lineman from Duncanville. So this thing is moving at a rapid pace, and I don't think you can worry about the 23 class before this 22 class is solidified. You just want to make your best roster the way it is, and if guys like Malik is not going to be scared to compete with Quinn Ewers, Casey Thompson, or whoever's on the roster, whether it be Charles Wright or Hudson Card. You're just trying to make the best class that you possibly can, create as much competition as you can. Because again, Alabama can keep guys on their roster for 3 or 4 years, never seen the field. Somehow they produce and win national championships, find themselves in the playoff, and then go become pros. That's when you'll see this program really take off.
I think that's enough on the quarterbacks. So let's talk about obviously if you don't have an offensive line, you're going to be in a position you were in this last year where quarterback doesn't have enough time to throw the ball to those receivers. Kind of want to go through some names here and what we're hearing from offensive line. I know people have been talking about it. So we're going to talk about offensive line recruits, transfers here. Devin Campbell's, it sounds like he's taking a official to Georgia this week. Dewberry sounds like he is going to visit Texas A&M this week. I think he probably is going to be a Texas A&M lean. I can tell you that it sounds like people are still very, very high on Miko back. People are very high on Campbell coming to University of Texas. And they consistently say the same thing. No crystal balls. The crystal balls have been the same. I think he's got 5 or 6 crystal balls out there. They're from a long time ago, but they haven't been changed. So until they start changing, I feel really good about Devin Campbell as well. It seems like Malik Ogbo out there from the Pacific Northwest, he's been crystal balled to Texas. He's actually been bonged, I believe, to Texas, which is a really good thing. That will be your first offensive tackle, seeing that you got 2 interior offensive linemen in Connor Robinson and Cole Hudson in this class already. It sounds like that's probably going to be your first tackle get in this recruiting class to this point. And then obviously it sounds like Banks, who obviously decommitted from Oregon. Sounds like LSU is trying to make a push there. There's also going to be other schools that make a push. But I think it's going to come down to probably Texas A&M, and LSU when it's all said and done. But it sounds like he's going to push his his commitment dates or his sign dates back to February, which I think is the smart thing to do, man. You were with the program for a while up there in Oregon. Your coach leaves, goes to Miami. Sit down, think about it a little bit, because if you're pressured into making a commitment now, even if you sign, if you sign, hell, you could transfer out of the program at any particular point and go to another program, even if you've signed. So right. With the way the transfer portal is.
And out of the guys you talked about, JRJ 151 has got my list. Like, if you seal the deal on Ogbo, if you can somehow, like you said, the leans are towards Campbell. Anybody we've talked to said he's going to go there. I was a little surprised that he didn't go to USC, but I'm glad he didn't go to USC for a second time, that he's going to Georgia. Check it out. But they feel like he's a strong Texas lean. And then if you can somehow get Kelvin Banks when it's in December or February, that's a heck of a class of linemen when you talk about having Cole Hudson and Connor Robertson. But then, like I said, Cam Williams is back on the market. Another guy that Texas was after, and I think it was down to Texas and Oregon before he committed to Oregon. Now he's decommitted, so another name that's back out there.
Yeah, I'm with you on these 3 guys, man. I think this is the 3 guys. If you could take your offensive line class right now, say, okay, I'll take Ogbo, a Banks, and a Campbell and put them with the Connor Robertson or in a Cole Hudson, man. To me, that is a minus, damn near a offensive line class. And I think over the next 2 years, I think what Kyle Flood and Sarkisian were frustrated is how over the last couple of years, if you only brought 2 offensive linemen in each one of these classes, which sets you back, you know what I'm saying? Because you can't rotate ones and twos because you don't have enough scholarship players to be able to do that. So I think over the next two classes, you're probably going to see them go the same numbers they had, probably not as big, but on the wide receiver side, you're probably going to see them try to do on the offensive line side of the ball, because I think they're also going to look for transfers. And one of those transfers currently being who was crystal ball to us from Brian Doan there is a offensive lineman out of Minnesota, Carlos Dunlap, has been crystal balled from Minnesota to us. And anytime that you can get an offensive lineman from the big man league there in the Big Ten, you definitely aren't going to turn those guys down.
No, I think you're looking at a solid class if you get those 4 or 5. But I think you're talking about how they did this defensive line this year. When you're talking about Tapp, Finkley, Brian, Ross, interior guys that fit the mold of what they're looking for. Now he has a year on campus. You saw Rafidi Gourmet transfer out. I think there was Tope Amadi's now graduated. Derek Kerstetter's gone. There's guys, there's positions open in this, 8-9 guys that make up your first and your swing tackles and guards, and then your what would make up your starting and backup center. So there's plenty of room there, unless Jalen Garth picks it up, Logan Parr picks it up, Isaiah Hookfin comes back from injury. Tyler Johnson, from what I understand, didn't practice with the football team for the last 3 months of this last year. So there's going to be plenty of offensive linemen, in this class, like you were going to talk about a little bit in the transfer portal, to turn this thing over for the better. And guys that they're talking about are Ernest Green, Cam Williams, Neto from Allen. I can't pronounce his last name very well. Omi Azulu, are guys that would be, can't miss, but you wouldn't want to turn down a scholarship for one of these guys if they were interested in coming to your school.
Yeah, somebody said right here, John Mitchell, literally, I would take 8-9 offensive linemen if we can get the top end guys. Absolutely. If Texas shouldn't be turning down any offensive lineman. I mean, I say that because obviously they want to get guys to fit their scheme, but they definitely need a whole bunch of offensive linemen moving forward. Just like you said a while ago, just like in the trenches on the defense side of the ball, what they've done in this class is what they need to do over the next couple of classes, is stack offensive linemen on top of offensive linemen, so that you can go out there and compete every day, each day, man, and try to put the best 5 guys out there that are going to be best for your program. And that's where it starts at, man. You can have Quinn Ewers, you can have a generational arm talent guy back there. You can have Bijan Robinson, you can have Xavier Worthy, you can have all these guys, man. But if you don't have an offensive line, the system's not going to run, man. You can't give a quarterback more than a couple of seconds to throw the ball to Xavier Worthy. You can't give Bijan Robinson the ball in the first half. He runs for 100 yards, and in the second half, he runs for 12 yards on 12 carries. There's a problem there. And right now, the football team starts in the trenches, both on the offensive side and the defense side of the ball. If you want to win football games, that's where it needs to start at.
Hey, I'm going to shout out a couple of guys that kind of kept this thing going along with Fanatic Perspective. Nino, Lando's in here. Appreciate you joining us, man, tonight. You guys kept it rolling in the last 3 months while me and Clint took a sabbatical for military training, a trip to Italy. My dog, again, was rehabbing in my office / studio for the last month, coming off a knee surgery. So we had a bunch of things going on, military training. I don't know if I said that, but really appreciate you guys, keeping this train rolling after a tough 5-7 season. Glad to have you in here. And there's 91 folks. Look, this has been our first show and live show in a while, since probably post game Oklahoma State or something. So glad that 91 folks are currently joining us. If you would not mind, hit that like button. If this is your first time viewing our program, please hit that subscribe button. Again, we're part of the TPPN network, the podcast, the Big Skin Podcast Network. Sponsored by DraftKings. So give them a listen. Go check out some of their other programs. I think they have an Oklahoma site, Alabama site. Most of them make major programs and many NFL sites on TPPN. So check those things out. But yeah, please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe if you haven't.
And shout out there to Texas Homer as well. Thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate you guys, man. As always, thanks for hanging out with us. So let's talk a little bit of NIL, man. $50,000 to the big men up front. And it sounds like $150,000 per. Again, haven't got into the eaches of it. So if y'all can explain it to us. NIL, man, it sounds like Texas is starting this off, and it sounds like other schools are angry that we're doing NIL but we didn't start off with NIL because we were kind of slow to move on it, man. Your thoughts on NIL, man, and the money that's, coming out of the woodworks that me and you obviously aren't contributing to?
No, it's just one of those things, man, that in order to keep up with the Joneses, like you move into a neighborhood, right? And you're going to the SEC of all places. Like you have to be able to get these athletes to your program and education, Austin, playing for the University of Texas sometimes may not be enough for a certain, athlete that's getting offered $200,000 annually. But let's just use Bryce Young as an example, who made $1 million before he ever took a snap at Alabama. Did he pay off? Absolutely. He's probably going to be the Heisman winner this weekend. But it's you have to be able to sell what your greatest asset is, and that's money at the University of Texas. You have the most affluent athletic program. We're not using athletic program money to pay these athletes, but what you are doing is you're bringing your TJ Fords and your Kenny Vaccaros, and they're building these, nonprofits that can allow us to compete with the programs that are already offering these deals. Like, this is not new. Like, we were griping and complaining over the summer that A&M is doing this and this program is doing this. Like, why are we not keeping up? Like, why are we slow to act? Why are they able to get on top of this guy and offer them this? And we're sitting on our hands, but it's compliance. Like, you don't want to jump into something, break the rules, then you find yourself on probation. You're not competing for conference championships. You're held out of bowl games. And so I just think we took our time. We realized the right way to do it. And I don't really care what Derek Ravel has to say about the University of Texas program. He's just a guy that's looking for a click. So I'm sure our compliance, and I stole this from, I think it was B&E, compliance department of the University of Texas was 2 people deep, this time last year. That compliance department looking into these deals has probably got to be 10 people deep at this point. And Clint's a compliance guy. So I told him he might want to apply down there to make sure their records are straight and what they're doing is legal.
Yeah, I didn't want to really talk about compliance. That's what I do all day, every day. You know what I'm saying? To make sure people follow the rules in medical and dental facilities. But hey, and I hope my boss ain't watching this, but if there's any positions open in the compliance department, hit me up, University of Texas. I'm willing to take one of those on. All right. He didn't hear me say that. And I didn't. But yeah, I think to me, it's funny because you're right, man. If you looked at it 2 or 3 months ago on Twitter and on message boards and all this other stuff, it's like, what the hell is Texas doing with the NIL? They haven't done anything. But we also don't know what's happening behind the curtain. What's happening behind the curtain when they're doing these things. And it's good that Texas waited for obviously the laws to be passed to make it right, 1. And then 2, that they're almost at the forefront of this after watching other schools piecemeal stuff together that really didn't make sense. Offering, what was it, $10,000 for, Texas A&M. They had offered, $10,000 a piece for 2 guys to get on a radio show or a YouTube channel or something. They paid them $10,000. In the scheme of things, you're paying that guy $10,000, but now we just paid a scholarship offensive lineman $50,000 to come to University of Texas. How do you consistently, or where does it end? I guess is what I'm saying. Are we going to start paying guys, student athletes, the same amount of money that a second round draft pick or a first round draft pick that's picked number 32? Are we going to be paying them the same amount of money moving forward?
That's the crazy piece about it is when we first started talking about this, I remember Rod Baber saying you got to produce. Like, your NIL and your brand is going to be nothing if you're not on the football field. But we're starting to see that everybody's getting paid, like, regardless of production. Like I said, I just chronicled, and again, it worked out for Alabama. Bryce Young's an excellent quarterback. They probably knew that when he got that $1 million deal. But there's going to be a lot of aches and pains if you start paying guys, without production. And I just don't know the right way to do it. I mean, we talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it on air, but we talked about it, on the phone is when a certain media organization has a kid who comes on their show weekly, and then they're paying that kid, then they're going to promote that kid throughout the season, whether he's doing well or not doing well. And it kind of convolutes the waters a little bit. And so in my mind, if you're pubbing Cane's Chicken Fingers, hey, get the Caniac deal. I think that's fine. I think if you're promoting a certain car dealership or a certain brand of car, I think that's fine. But when you're talking about things like you're talking about, hey, come on my show, I'll give you a certain amount of money. I think that kind of messes with the waters a little bit. That media organization is going to continue to cap that kid regardless of production or how he's playing on the football field. And it's going to kind of muddy the waters just a little bit.
So Texas,
I don't know if I answered your question. It's just one of those things that I think kind of messes with it.
I think it ends when the right thing is done, which is for schools to profit share and directly pay players that perform the labor. Until then, it'll be a game of one-upping each other in the NIL. And I think that's true across the board, because I think you brought that up to me last night.
Did.
It's almost across the board, right?
So I was always in favor of paying players a stipend. And I always thought it should be driven by the amount of money that program feeds the university. So in my mind, the examples I gave is if you're a football player and you're selling out DKR and you're making this much revenue and season tickets or ticket sales and concession sales and parking spaces and merchandise, that stipend should be better than an athlete who's on the rowing team. I've always felt like they should pay the players at a certain sport in a certain conference the same thing. But then again, if you go outside the conference and SEC is grossing this much money and Big 12 is grossing this much money, the SEC player is probably going to make more, and then they're just going to want to go there. So I just don't know the right way to do it. I always thought that athletes should get paid because of what they produce for the university. I just don't know. But again, like you're saying, Homer, it's going to be one of those things. It's a bidding war, and it's going to get nasty. It's going to get ugly. But I think it's always better if it's in the forefront and you're saying, hey, I'm going to give my offensive lineman $50,000 grants or subsidies, than giving them trash bags full of money or McDonald's bags full of money. You know what I mean?
I was about to say that. It's at the forefront now, because it used to be, and you'd be crazy to think that these schools, not all schools, aren't doing this, right? Going back to the Trans Am, right? SMU doing those things, man. This stuff has been going on for 40, 50, 60, 70 years, as long as you can remember that kids were getting backdoor pay, backdoor channel paid or whatever the case may be. Now it's at the forefront. Instead of saying, how I'm going to give you $50,000 in a bag or into your bank account or into mama's bank account, I'm going to give you I can tell you that I'm giving you $50,000 for being a scholarship football player at the University of Texas. I think if you go back and look at it, and I'll name a couple of people here, let's use Spencer Rattler as a guy, right? Whole bunch of NIL deals. Oklahoma, after his 5th game, they're booing him. They're upset about all the deals he got, right? Or he's more focused on his NIL money than he is playing football for Oklahoma, right? So you better hope your return on investment is worth paying someone. I'm just saying, and I'm going back to this Quinn Ewers deal. People are talking about $4 million on here to a guy that has not played high school football since 2021, and he's taken 2 college snaps his entire collegiate career. And we're paying him $4 million. So what happens to the fan base when he goes out there and he throws 2-3 interceptions as a freshman, right? Starter for the University of Texas? Who's going to be up in arms about the NIL deals and paying this guy $4 million? Because it's going to happen, because we are part of that fan base. Does it happen? So that's what I'm looking at. You know what I'm saying? How does it impact the players? Are they going to be as hungry as what they would if they didn't get paid and had to try to make it to the next level? Do they keep that drive? Do they keep that drive, or they rain hungry? I think that's a piece of it too that we have to understand, is really that mental piece of being paid as a student athlete a whole bunch of money, but you never earn that money. NFL guys are earning that money because they made it to the collegiate level, and now they're going to go play for a pro football team. They've earned that money. Now we're earning it out of high school going into college. I'm not against NIL. I believe we should play these players something. But how high does it eventually go? Is somebody paying a quarterback out of high school $10 million, to go to Alabama next year or to go to USC, so on and so forth?
It's definitely going to get there without regulation. And who's going to regulate it? These numbers aren't going to, just like a A-Rod contract now. When the Texas Rangers signed A-Rod to 10-year, $252 million, I think it was at the time, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. That was an insane contract. If you look at what the Texas Rangers just signed Corey Seager to, it's always going to go up. Whether it was $1 million from Ohio State, if it ends up being 2 or 3, 4 from the University of Texas, 2 or 3 years from now, when the next guy comes along who's the number one recruit in the country, who somebody wants to have on their football team, numbers going to go up. And that's what I'm saying. Like, who is the regulator of this? Do we want it regulated? Like, how if you regulate it at the state level, then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage against other states. But if you, I think regulating it at the federal level through the NCAA is not the answer either. So it's for somebody smarter than me. You know what I mean? But when me and you started equating college football to the NFL, we were talking about the transfer portal is essentially free agency, and your recruiting class is essentially your draft class. We weren't wrong, and it's going to get even further down that road than it is from amateur athletics to professional athletics. It's going to go the right a lot faster. It's going to go left.
Yeah, I'm a Josh Page guy. I'm a traditionalist at heart. But I know that in life, things change. You got to adapt to change, and that's currently where we're at. And I'm glad Texas is at the forefront of this because it was going to come eventually. You know, where we're, you know, obviously it's happened at Oregon, it's happened at Miami. They were paying. I think a group of guys got together to pay each one of these athletes. I think BYU, if I'm not mistaken, they were paying somehow. They came up with a stipend to be able to pay the non-scholarships players. You know, those monies, you know, so it's happening. I just think that it's now at the forefront and you're seeing large amounts of money come from the University of Texas. And I think people are going to continue to hate on Texas anytime they try to take a step forward to really create space between them and other schools around them. But money doesn't make your team win either. It doesn't make you win. You can spend all the money in the world you want to on all these guys, but if they can't go out there and perform between the lines for 4 quarters, for 12 weeks, 13, 12, 13, 14 weeks, whatever it may be in a season, that money is really not going to matter.
And I think I popped up Arch Manning could be easily worth $10 million, and I think that's true. And Candace Queen Bee comes back, 17, 18-year-olds going to need agents. And I think they already do. Everybody has an advisor. Everybody has a parent. Everybody has an uncle. Everybody has a football coach who's looking out for their best interests when they come into recruiting. That's why they take home visits. And when they deal with home visits, they're not just dealing with parents. They're dealing with Uncle Joe. They're dealing with the high school football coach, position coach, D coordinator who's looking for the best spot for that kid to eventually do what Clint said and become a professional athlete and get paid over 10 years, a handsome sum of money. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I like this, man. I point up Texas homework quite a bit tonight. Texas can't make a move without sensationalism. It's a blessing and a curse. It's how a team down for a decade is still in the news every other week, which is crazy. You haven't won anything in a decade, but you're honestly in everybody's mind each and every day when you make a move, regardless of what it is. It's the craziest damn thing. Sensationalism. Thanks, Texas Homer. I like that, man. I may steal that. I may talk about that at work tomorrow.
But to me, it's semantics. They're only allowed to get a lawyer at this point, but lawyers are agents. If you look at any agent, they generally have a law degree or somebody working really, really close with them who understands law and the ability. Again, we're talking about compliance.
Read contracts.
Yeah, read contracts and figure out what's best for their client. The same thing with the compliance. At the University of Texas, they're looking at these NIL deals. They're reading these contracts and they're probably going back and forth just like an agent would with a member of the Dallas Cowboys front office. In the NFL world, they hey, this is legal. Hey, this is not. Hey, we can skirt it by doing this. Move a little bit left. Move a little bit right. But it's we haven't talked a stitch of X's and O's because it's the off season. We've talked a lot of recruiting. We talked a lot of NIL, which is something that's not really in my wheelhouse. But it's been a really good show. And there's 108 folks in here. Again, I'll tout the channel. We got guys like Texas Homer. We got Lando Show in here. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You 108 folks in here. Really appreciate your attendance. Again, we've been off for a little bit, so just happy. Never thought we'd get 108 folks in here after being off as long as we have, but really appreciative of your attendance. If you haven't hit that like button, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. Just happy to be here. Happy to be back doing what we love to do, and that's talk ball, especially University of Texas football. You still there? I got you. You got me?
Yeah, I got you back. So, we got excited, man. We got excited about 108 people in here, and our internet went wild because we had too many people. Mark Lippert said he was just excited to have somebody just to have something to be excited about after this sorry season that we did have. Absolutely. I'm with you, man. We got to look for some positives. The positives. I can tell you what, man, going through the winter into the spring, into the summer, me and Jeremy have already decided that we're going to pull back the burnt orange glasses a little bit, man, and try to not get it as hyped about the team until the team starts performing on Saturdays going into the season. So we're definitely going to still be involved in off season, but we gotta be really careful, man. Over the last couple of years, since we've been doing this, you're hyping up a team, and then all of a sudden you're firing a coach, and then you take a coach and you wind up going 5-7 when you should be going probably, at a minimum, probably 7-4, somewhere along there at the end of the season. But appreciate it, Jason, man. We're excited to be back too, man. Like I said, I'm not going to get in the habit of promising shows, but I can promise you, I'm not going to say this. I'm not going to get in the habit of promising shows, but me and Jeremy are going to try our best moving forward to at least do a show on a Wednesday in a Sunday afternoon. So,
yeah, like you said, we're happy to be back. This is what we do. We love doing it. It's a passion project for us, but we never want to come on here unprepared. We never want to come here and give you a half-hearted show. We always want to come on here and give you good content. And I was about to pull up David's comment. You can read it, and then I want to answer it a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder if Texas could potentially have a top 5 recruiting class after going 5-7 and losing to Kansas without the Texas Homer NIL sensationalization.
No, it's relevant. You're always relevant at the University of Texas, and that's the thing. It's not just a 5-7 season. It's a 7-3 COVID year. It was like you said, a firing of a coach. They're always going to be relevant. They're everybody else's rival in the Big 12 conference. When they go to the SEC, it's going to be the same way. They're going to go in there and they're going to have A&M as a rival. They're going to have Arkansas as a rival. We saw that this year. LSU is going to be their rival. They're always going to be relevant, and this state produces so many good football players that they're always going to have the potential, especially again with this. What this coaching staff could sell is the only player that I brought in this university that was a high school kid that never touched another campus, that wasn't a transfer, that had played for another school, was Xavier Worthy. We'll get the kind of guys here that are going to be able to produce. And they're continuing to tell that story. And these guys the Derek Browns and the Justice Finkleys are listening to their message, and they're talking to proven position coaches. And again, like you said, I kind of chronicle what Beer Parcells said, the great Hall of Fame coach for the Giants and the Cowboys. And he said, your record is what it is. This is a 5-7 football team. And if you're a 5-7 football team, you need to find ways to get better. And if you're not getting better through, churning your roster, how are you going to get better? By development, right? So the guys that are currently on the roster have to get better, but you got to bring better athletes in here that are willing to compete with them and give them a run for their money and take their jobs, because that's when you're going to see this team get better. And it sounds like Landon Jackson, the defensive end from Texarkana, who recently decommitted from LSU, might have joined the University of Texas. Haven't been on social since we're talking to you guys, but that would be a great addition to this football team. Again, trying to make that defensive line.
Wow. If he is, man. If he is, I'm scrolling through Twitter. Like I said, I told Jeremy before we got on here, everything we talk about tonight could change before we get on here tonight. There's a lot of things could be added before we actually get off tonight. So real quick, Candace Queen B, definitely have to do one of these on early side of day. That's going to be a must. We will definitely do that. He said $50 to TFT chat if it doesn't happen. So he's saying that he's coming to the Longhorns. If he doesn't, he's got a super chat, $50 to the Texas Football Talk chat. If he doesn't, damn, I like your where your head's at, Lando. We definitely could use some of those defensive linemen. Landon Jackson, man, he's a kid out of Texarkana, right?
Yeah,
he's
Texarkana.
Texarkana. Yep. Last.
Pleasant Grove.
Yeah, there was one other comment here. If we do strike out on Quinn, what's the backup plan? The backup plan to me is you got Casey Thompson, man. You got Casey Thompson, you got Hudson Card, you got Malik Murphy, you got Charles Wright. I think that Sark will probably bring in a fourth year transfer. If I was to say right now, I would say that if you don't with Quinn Ewers, there's probably still going to be a very, very high chance that Steve Sarkisian brings in some transfer from another program to create a quarterback competition.
Yeah, and there was a list on 247 that was a pretty good list of, like you said, experienced quarterbacks who play for high-level programs that had contributed to football teams. And if that's where you want to go to if you want to give Casey Thompson, if you don't think Malik is ready and you don't get Quinn Ewers to sign with this 2022 class. And I think you bring in a veteran like you're talking about that can compete. And again, I'm not poo-pooing on Charles Wright. I'm not poo-pooing on Hudson Card. You just want to create as much competition in that room as you possibly can. And the list had a group of guys, and it also said after bowl season, there's probably going to be another list of guys, post National Signing Day 1 that would probably enter the transfer portal as well.
Jeff Post said, "I'm glad y'all drink the y'all going to drink the Kool-Aid like the rest of us because we're true fans. It's going to happen. We say it's going to be difficult to hold that back in the spring, but as football gets closer to the fall, you're going to get excited about your football team. You're going to hear things that come out of there. But I think we got to, until we see that offensive defensive line on a Saturday over multiple Saturdays, it's hard. It's going to be really, really hard to want to feed into the hype because that's what I'm looking for, man. Because I think if you had an average to good offensive line, I think your offense would look different, which already put up a whole bunch of points. If you had some defensive edge rushing guys that put pressure on the quarterback, I think the rest of your defensive line, your linebackers and your defensive backs would have looked a lot better than what they did in the season. So it's all going to come down to the offensive and defensive lines for me going into next year. So we'll see where we're at the end of this early signing day, transfers, going into winter, and then where we look like as far as offensive line, defensive line going into spring ball. He's over here. How do you highlight the names when you add them? I think Lando's asking the question here. Let me see here. We've got about 4 more minutes before we get off here. I'm trying to look for some good comments, man. You see some?
Just you want to talk about the minute? You got 3 more topics you want to touch. You want to talk about the Minnesota transfer offensive lineman?
I did. I brought him up.
Stanley.
I did. I did talk to him. I brought up his name after we talked about the offensive line recruits. But yeah, I think it's big. I think where you're going to see if you don't get the recruiting class that you think you are from the high school, recruits, I think you're going to see a big push for these offensive linemen. I think Kyle Flood's going to make a big push for some offensive line transfers. So I think you're going to have a big class, man. I would probably put it between transfers and offensive line commits. I would say you're probably going to get somewhere between two or three more, in the 2022 class. I would say when it's all said and done, you're probably going to have somewhere between 7 to 9 offensive line recruits between high school and transfers. That's where I see that.
I think you have to. I think it's like we talked about Tope Bay, Derek Kerstetter, and then somebody threw up another another graduate, Denzel Okafor, and then I think when Rafidi Gourmet, transferring out, I think you got to turn this room over. And I think 7 to 9 is probably that number. And if you get 5 recruits and two experienced, transfers from high major college football that are productive, then I think that makes a good offensive line class.
Yeah. Where do we currently sit right now after you name those lists? Because you have your 2 deep up there in front of you. Who does that leave us on offensive line currently coming back? Okay,
so just on the 2 deep, I got Christian Jones coming back. He'll be a senior. Jalen Garth was his backup. He'll be a sophomore. Junior Aguilar is going to be a senior. Hayden Connor will be a sophomore. Max Morrell will be a sophomore. Isaiah Hookfin will be a junior. Andre Carrick will be a junior. Andre Carrick will be a sophomore. And that's just off the 2 deep, right off the jump.
Yeah, I'm reading this here because I actually seen it on Twitter a while ago. That Denver Harris got fonged to Texas A&M with a confidence score of 3, which is weird to me. You know what I'm saying? If your confidence score is not over 5, why are you putting a confidence? Why are you putting a crystal ball in for a football player, especially a top 10 guy? That to me, you're giving somebody else a 70% chance of grabbing that guy. Because if you're looking at percentages, 30% is not very high. That means there's a 70% chance that somebody else is going to get him. Why do it at all? But hey, somebody asked why, or let me see here. I don't see how we can't take offensive line transfers. The incoming freshmen, no matter how many stars they have, are not going to be ready to go. And I think there's probably only, if I'm looking at 2 guys that they can play right now, because if you go back and look at what Texas A&M had, they had Feathery playing offensive tackle, and then they had Bryce, can't remember his last name there, that's got an NIL deal with Sunflower Seeds. I can't think of the center's name there.
Oh, yeah. Hayden Connor's teammate, Bryce Foster.
Bryce Foster are both true freshmen, actually true freshman All-American, multiple. So I think the two, if you get them, Banks and Campbell probably have the best opportunity to start next year at the University of Texas coming in.
That was the two I was going to say too, Kelvin Banks and Devin Campbell.
Yeah, those guys are definitely.
I mean, I would love to see Cole Hudson compete. I think Hayden Connor's going to compete for a starting job next year. I think Jake Majors is pretty solidified at center, but I'd like to get somebody. We talked about, the possibility of sliding Connor Robertson inside to play center. It's an interesting class. If, like I said, if you can somehow, close on Banks, Ogbo, and Devin Campbell, you're in a good spot. But like I said, I don't think you can hurt yourself with grabbing two veterans, productive offensive linemen who in the transfer portal. Absolutely not.
Yep. Dave Williams agrees with us here that two deep streams of recruiting class needing an offensive lineman to come in and compete and start immediately. Texas might have true freshmen starting next year, and those true freshmen, tell me if I'm wrong, David Williams, probably on your list, are probably going to be Banks and Campbell as well. And I think those are the two guys that definitely could come in and push for a starting position, if not get a starting position. So I know Lando's show, man, we're about recruiting too, and we go out to 7-on-7 and do these things. I know Lando's show has been pushing Jackson LaHue. I'm not sure exactly where he's from, Lando show, but I know that he's been pushing this guy. He's a 3-star. I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was committed to Virginia Tech. So it's another name to be watching out there too. Watching out for on the offensive line recruiting there in this class. So, but man, it's been fun. I'll tell you, I was nervous, man. As soon as we hit that little countdown button, man, I was like, goodness gracious, what just happened to me? But when you get on here and you have 110 people, really, really good comments back and forth. It kind of eases the nerves a little bit. But definitely excited to be back. Cody Phillips, we're excited to be back. I'm glad it's good to see you as well in here. We appreciate you listening to you. I'm going to say it one more time. Please hit that like button if you haven't hit that like button. If it's the first time listening to us, please hit that subscribe button. Like I said, no promises about when the shows are going to happen, so you probably need to hit that, put that notification bell on. But at a minimum, we're going to try to do one show. At the best, try to do 2 shows, one on Wednesday and Sunday. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and we try to stay pretty engaging on Twitter, so you can find us there at TX Football Talk. And as well as this, we'll also be doing shows on our podcast channel. We are sponsored, or I guess sponsored by DraftKings. You can find us there, promo code TPPN. You can find us on any podcast of your choice there at Texas Football Talk Podcast on Apple, Stitcher, or Spotify. Hey, we appreciate you hanging out with us tonight, man. We're excited to be back. Got anything you want to add, Jeremy?
No, just like you said, just good to be back with friends and family. Good to talk Longhorn football. Again, don't want to overlook this basketball team, number 17 in the country, getting after it with Seton Hall. Probably their toughest game on the schedule since they played Gonzaga. So give them support too. I know Chris Beard, if you guys are in the Austin area, is looking for a lot of folks to start attending those basketball games and ramp them up. So let's support Timmy Allen, Christian Bishop, Trey Mitchell, and the guys that we had coming back. Of course, Brock Cunningham, Andrew Jones, Courtney Ramey, and the rest of that roster as they try to get better and better going into the Big 12 season. So, no, thank you so much for listening. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button.
We appreciate it.
Great show.
Y'all have a wonderful night. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.